So now, up for the first speaker of the day, we're going to have Mina Boström Nakicenovic. I hope I got that right. So Mina is head of development at NetEnt, and she has 20 years of experience of software development. She's passionate about agile software development. And today, she's going to talk about leadership as a service in agile organizations. So welcome on stage, Mina.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's working. Good. So it was 1912, Berlin, a nuclear physics conference. All prominent scientists sitting in the first row. Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, Max Planck. Eva von Baer, the first Swedish female docent in physics, is supposed to open the conference. She's a little bit nervous, but determined also. She starts the conference with the following words. My ladies and gentlemen. Silence in the audience. It was a historical moment because it was the first time that a scientific conference started in such a way. My ladies and gentlemen. All previous conferences started with just my gentlemen. But now there are two ladies in the room, Eva and Lise Meitner. Lise Meitner was also a nuclear physicist. She was the first who described the nuclear fission phenomena. She was nominated for the Nobel Prize 19 times by all these prominent scientists. Unfortunately, she never got it. Today, 100 years later, I'm so happy to start this conference with the following words. My dear ladies and some gentlemen. My name is Mina and I'm a swimmer. Of course, swimming is only my hobby, but it's a big hobby. Our country house is next to one lake. For many years, I have been watching the opposite side and longing to swim across the lake, together with the friends. 2 years ago, I did it. We were 4 people swimming, 3 adults and 1 child, my middle son. We added 2 more disciplines, running and sports airgun shooting, in order to get a real triathlon, or as we call it in Swedish, simskytte. It was a great day spent with the friends. Therefore, we continued with this nice tradition, last year and this year also. But something amazing happened this year. Our friends heard about that event, and they have started calling us and saying, oh, can we participate? Can we swim with you? Sure. So this year, we were 20 people swimming. Wow. You know, we grew from 4 to 20 people only within 2 years. My family was so happy because of that. And pretty tired afterwards. Because when my dear husband Gustav and me talked about that event, we realized that this year the event was much more stressful compared to the previous years, especially the swimming part. And since we are agile people, we did a retrospective. We wanted to see which things worked well and which things can be improved. We were high on motivation. As I already said, we didn't even have to call our friends. They called spontaneously and wanted to participate in this event. They had a very good swimming technique, although they're not swimmers in the way as I am. But they listened to my advices when to crawl, when to swim breaststroke or backstroke. So I was a good role model as a swimmer, and they trusted me. We managed to create a nice environment of psychological safety because our friends, they brought their families. They let even their children swimming with us. So it was really very good. But the execution, let's see what happened. I've tried to put clear expectations and the vision. It was a yellow boat on the opposite side. Also goals to swim across the lake. We had even a strategy that we should swim all together, having me in a leading position as the most experienced swimmer, and having my husband at the end driving the rescue boat. But when we have started swimming, I saw that all people are swimming in different directions. They were not aligned, so we have the alignment problem. And I can tell you, we had a lot of self-driven autonomous families choosing their own ways. Some people were very creative. They didn't choose the straight paths to swim. Instead, they were swimming zigzag because of the wind, because of the waves. I was very stressed, I can tell you. But everyone reached to the other side. That was good. We weren't so good at discipline because some people came very late, so we started the event very late. Putting all together, we had a scaling problem. Apart from being a swimmer, I'm a software engineer also, and currently I'm leading one of the development departments at NetEnt. And when I saw all these words, they reminded me directly on everyday challenges which I'm experiencing at my work. I try to group them in different ways because I believe that they belong to the different domains. Here is much more leadership and people management related. Here is business related and technology. When talking about engineering leadership, many people are referring to one or all three domains, so it's nothing completely new. But what I was curious to know, are these three domains completely independent, or there's some dependency between them, maybe even intersections? Are they loosely coupled or tightly coupled? Let's see. But let's start first from the basics. What does it mean to lead people? When you start your career, you start by leading yourself. You join a team, you get assignments, and you are fulfilling these assignments. After that, maybe you start leading a team, so you're leading others. Later on, maybe you get more teams to report to you, so you are leading the leaders, other managers. Later on, maybe you can become a functional leader, head of some department, or a business leader, leading the whole business unit. Then you become a group leader, chief officer of our domain, and at the end, the enterprise leader. This is the leadership pipeline described by Ram Charan. And it's clearly to see that you need different leadership skills depending on the level in this leadership pipeline. Of course, it's not the same if you're leading just one team or the whole business unit, right? But on the other side, there is something that is in common for all the levels in this leadership pipeline. Regardless of the level, you always have two customers of your leadership. You have people, direct reports, your followers, whom you should lead, empower, and help to grow. On the other side, you have your bosses, to whom you should have to deliver business performance. So you have two customers of your leadership, and your leadership skills should satisfy both. That's why I like the following definition of leadership proposed by Mauborgne and Kim, that you can see on leadership being as a service that people in organization buy or don't buy. If they buy your leadership, they will act with the engagement and commitment. If they don't buy it, they will disengage. And as I already said, being a software engineer, when I saw this definition, I have directly started thinking about leadership as a service and service-oriented architecture and enterprise service bus. Do you remember? Enterprise service bus in service-oriented architecture implements the communication system between mutually interacting software applications. So you have the bus and different services. What is the responsibility of an enterprise service bus? Is service binding, that you bind similar services, management, listening, load balancing, that you see, oh, this service has much to do, let's load balance, and etc. And isn't it exactly what we are doing as leaders? So we are, in a way, enterprise service bosses. Credit for this goes to my dear husband, Gustav, enterprise service boss. And if you continue with this nice metaphor and thinking that enterprise service boss is responsible for communication in an organization, let's see which communications patterns should we use. In service-oriented architecture, first we have something that is called orchestration. You have the central orchestrator, which is orchestrating with the different services by sending requests and waiting on replies. And it's exactly what we are doing during all our one-to-ones. People management, right? You ask something, wait for a response. Ask something, wait for a response. There is another architectural pattern that is now very popular in microservices architecture. It's called event-driven or reactive. You have one event stream and different services who are subscribing or publishing different things on that stream. And this is exactly what we are doing when we are delivering business performance. You create a report where your department did, put some on a shared drive. Maybe take another report in order to understand what is happening in another department. So we are kind of using that event-driven approach when we are delivering business values. Let's try to fill in this quadrant. If you're not orchestrating or not running that reactive style, it's no leadership. You are not doing anything. What happens if you're only orchestrating, only working with the people, with your team? It means that you have a main focus on your team, on your team's direct reports. On one side, that is good. You will create that engagement. But on the other side, there is a risk that even if you are creating high-performance teams, that you will create a silo that does not follow the rest of the organization. Or maybe it's too ahead of the rest of the organization, but it's not good either. So it's not good only to have a focus on your direct reports. On the other side, if you're only event business-driven, it means that you have a main focus on the big picture, on your bosses. Maybe you're sitting in some management team. That's good to have a big picture, but if you forget your teams, your direct reports, what will happen? They will disengage and you cannot deliver any business value. So from my perspective, the best communication leadership style is a hybrid model, when you're combining both styles with your direct reports and teams doing a lot of orchestrating one-to-ones, but at the same time have that event-driven reactive approach. At NetEnt, we are saying that a good leader must be a good helicopter pilot. Why? You should have an ability to go up in the sky to see the macro picture, but if you see some problem underneath, that you have an ability to go down very quickly and solve that problem. So all the time, big picture, and then go down to your teams, and to be a good helicopter pilot. Now we have been talking about only communication patterns. But let's go back to my circles, leadership, business, and technology, and try to find intersections between them. Let's start first with the business. Each company has a vision, where you want to go, and a strategy, how to go there. Your responsibility as a leader is first to understand that vision and strategy, really having a clear understanding of it, and also translating it to your teams, that they understand what is the company vision and why we set the strategy as we set. It's even more important to do that in agile organizations. Let's see why. Let's take a look at this autonomy and alignment problem, illustrated so nicely by Henrik Kniberg. What does it mean to have autonomy as a person or as a team? That you can do your decisions by yourself, that you are self-driven. So you have organizations with low autonomy and high autonomy. Regarding alignment, you have also organizations which have a low alignment, that teams are not aligned towards the same goals, and the high alignments, that everyone is working in tact, like producing. In old-fashioned hierarchical organizations, usually we have a high alignment. You have a manager who is saying, the problem is that we need to cross the river. But after telling the problem, he's telling the solution directly and saying, build the bridge. And then all teams are building the bridge. So maybe in this situation, it's not so important that everyone understands that big picture and strategy, because they have a manager who is telling them what to do. What is drawback? Is there any room here for creativity? Maybe the most efficient way to cross a river is not to build the bridge. Maybe you're creative and do something else, right? So in startup companies, usually we have a lot of autonomy. There is a lot of spaces for creativity, that people decide in which way they want to solve the problems. But usually they have a problem with alignment, that all teams are not aligned towards the company strategy. So the goal is to find a good balance between high autonomy and high alignment. So to give the clear directions and the vision and strategy, but let teams find their ways how to go there. And it's your responsibility as an engineering leader to do that. At NetEnt, we are using a little bit other wording. So instead of autonomy, we are saying culture of initiative, and for alignment, culture of discipline. That you have a discipline to execute all these good initiatives. So we can say that we found our first intersection between leadership and the business. It's that problem, alignment versus autonomy. How to find a good balance. Let's continue with the business. So let's assume that it's clear what is company vision and strategy. And then it comes to the execution. You execute on the strategy. Maybe not all of your decisions are based on the strategy. Sometimes you're doing some tactical solution just for this customer, but mainly you are executing on the strategy, and then you end up in some state that is a little bit further away from desired state, but that gap is not so big. This graph says that you have mainly executed on a strategy, so you applied strategic solutions. Let's see another situation. So you also set a vision and strategy, but during the time, you're applying a lot of tactical solution just for this customer, just for this market. It's so typical, especially in sales-driven organizations, which are signing the contract without checking with the rest of the organization. So all the time, you're doing something else, not your strategy, and you end up in the state that is much further away from the desired state. And then you get that big gap. That is not good. It always leads to missed revenue. So I will say, mind the gap. It's your responsibility as a leader to see and find a good balance between strategic and tactical solutions. And always, you cannot execute only on strategy. It must be some room for tactical solutions, of course, but mind that gap, that it does not become too big. It's very interesting, especially in the engineering world, in tech companies, because this problem is related to another problem. What will happen with your system architecture if you have applied too many tactical solutions? I will use this save slide to explain it, what it happens. When you set some strategy, product strategy, or company strategy, and then you are planning your architecture, your system architecture, what to build. And usually you have a team of architects, maybe lead developers, who are defining that so-called intentional architecture or target architecture. When it comes to the implementation, you have a development teams which starts implementing things. And on that way, they discover some new things that you couldn't plan from the beginning. So some design emerges bottom up. And that's perfectly fine. It should be like that. Because that emergent design corrects the target architecture. You don't know what will happen in the future, right? So you can not know all the details. But what is equally important is that that target architecture constrains emergent design so that it does not emerge all over the place and that your system architecture ends up in a mess. If you have applied too many tactical solutions, one-off solution, just for this customer, just for this customer, you will end up in too much emergent design, and your system architecture will not be good. So, although you are not responsible to create that technical and architectural roadmap, you are, as a leader, engineering leader, you are accountable for that. And you have to think about strategic and tactical solutions. Both what does it mean for business side, but also for your system architecture. So I would put this strategic versus tactical solutions problems and balance in intersection between business and technology, because you are responsible to monitor that gap. Is there any intersection between leadership and technology? What do you think? Let's recall what Mel Conway said a long time ago. Organizations' communication structure is always the mirror on the system design. Organizational structure, system architecture. It's title coupled. Let's see an example. Earlier, in traditional organizations, how did we build our development teams? You started from a database team, and then you have a back-end team, and then you have a front-end team, and then you have maybe a team responsible for delivery and for integrations, and so on. Such organizational structure will always end up in this monolithic architecture, because organizational structure is also a mirror on the system architecture. Many companies are moving towards the microservices nowadays, right? And they're so focused on refactoring the architecture. But what is important? To really get all benefit of one or several microservices, and the goal is that they are completely independent and can be deployed independent, you have to reorganize your teams to have a really cross-functional teams which can take the whole vertical responsibility for microservice, not only implementation, but also deployment, integration, testing, the whole life cycle. So engineering leaders should think about that when you are refactoring your architecture, that your organizational structure must follow. Otherwise, you're going to fail. Or vice versa. If you're reorganizing your teams, you have to think, okay, if I have this setup, how my system architecture will look like? Is it something what I want or not? So, Conway's law is in the intersection between leadership and technology. Let's put back other intersections that we found today. But there is one empty space in the middle. Is there anything that should be in the middle that is in the intersection of leadership, business, and technology? Any ideas? Not, it's still early in the morning. From my perspective, it's the innovation. Many companies, when they start thinking how to innovate their products, services, offerings in general, they start with the business analysis, market analysis, competitors analysis, SWOT, and so on. But at the same time, you should take a look at the technology. Do you have technical capabilities to go for this innovation or another innovation? Furthermore, maybe you have some technical competitive advantage that you can use in order to improve the customer value. Data-driven innovation. It comes from technology because you have to have a client statistic in place, BI, data lake, all those things in place in order to implement real data-driven innovation. And also, your leadership style should enable creativity. You will remember what we said about organizations with low autonomy. There is no space for creativity. So it's your responsibility as a leader to enable creativity in your teams and also to drive initiatives. So we can say the best innovation happens when you combine that top-down innovation coming from the business side, that outside perspective, what is happening on the market, competitors, but also bottom-up capabilities on technological side, data-driven innovation, but also combined with the leadership styles. So let's put all those intersections together and add additional things which I mentioned at the beginning of my talk. I call these circles for Mina's circles because it's only my perspective on leadership skills needed for leading software development. And if you're interested to learn more about Eva von Bahr and Lise Meitner leadership skills when leading nuclear physics research, I recommend reading this wonderful book, Kärlek och kärnfysik. Thank you for listening.
So, thank you so much, Mina. Extremely interesting presentation.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the audience for Mina? Yes.
Yes. It was 1 kilometer, so it wasn't so requiring swimming from my perspective. But since we had a lot of children, it was a big success for them, I can say.
Very good. Okay, thank you so much. Very inspiring.
Thank you.
I can have the clicker.